And it's been raging for the last 1 week or so. And it all started because of a petition that was filed at Shraj by Samuel Blakwa. And tonight we're going to look at that, because also today on the Super Morning Show this morning, we heard from the main architect, the main person involved in this. I'm talking about Samuel Blakwa himself, but also the protagonist in the matter, Bryan Acheampong. And I'm talking about Bryan Acheampong, who is obviously the Greek minister. And it has to do with that SNIT asset sale, which has become very, very controversial. Which assets are we talking about? We are talking about some hotels that the SNIT wanted to sell. They wanted to sell 60% stake in these top hotels. The key questions are really what exactly were they looking for when they wanted to sell this, and in the selection of the strategic partner. And that is where the controversy begins. The selection of a strategic partner was something that they aggressively pursued, and they used the international competitive tendering process. So they wanted world-class organizations to come in to the country to take over the hotels, the 60% shares that SNIT owned. They wanted to sell it, but they wanted world-class firms to come in. But they didn't just want them. Why is it that they wanted them? They wanted them because they wanted capital injection. And that was important. We're looking at the essential criteria that we're using to make a selection. Why is that important? Because Bryan Acheampong's Rock City Hotel won this particular bidding process, which has raised a whole controversy around conflict of interest, etc. But they also wanted a firm to come in to assist in the hotel management. The key question to ask is, Rock City won this particular tendering process. Did they have the capital that they can inject in the 4 hotels? And I'll come to the 4 hotels pretty shortly. But also, did they have the skills to manage them, right? And were they world class? Those are very important points to ask. But also, a few very important points that you should look forward to in terms of the key issues that we're looking at. They also wanted a company that, in essence, when it comes in, it is able to lead to efficiency, profitability. Those are very important things that they were looking for. These are the the hotels in question. And we're talking about the Labadi Beach Hotel, which is a crown and a jewel, which is a big one indeed. I love Labadi Beach Hotel. And the SNIT wanted to sell the 60% shares and all of it together. Initially, there were 6 hotels in all. That was whittled down to 4. Organized Labour has an issue with that. And as you know, it's a 5-star hotel, the Labadi Beach Hotel, and it's quite big, 164 rooms they have there. And then you also talk about the La Palma Royal Beach Resort, which is a hotel that, when it was built at the time, it was one of the finest hotels. I remember one time when we have the US president coming to this country, there are people who were suggesting that he should sleep at the La Palma Royal Beach Hotel. That was how grand it was then, that you were even considering that it was befitting the status of a US president. But of course, that has been, many say, has been run down by now. And so SNIT says they wanted somebody in to manage it and run it properly. So that is a 4-star hotel, again, right next to the Labadi Beach Hotel there at La. You have the Mina Beach Resort also, which is a 3-star hotel, has 100 rooms. Ridge Royal Hotel, Buja Resort, and Trust Lodge hotels, that were all part of the package that SNIT wanted to dispose of, right? And that is what Bryan Acheampong's Rock City Hotel looked at and won. So that's what we know as far as the hotels are concerned. But also, if you isolate Labadi Beach Hotel, why? Because Labadi Beach Hotel is a crown and that jewel, and that many people will know Labadi Beach Hotel. The other hotels aren't as popular as Labadi Beach Hotel. Is the biggest, of course, and in terms of placing the value on it, that would definitely be more expensive than the rest. And if you go to the background, it's 5 stars. You see, currently 100% owned by SNIT, right? And it was built some time ago in 1991, thereabout. And it has been one of the places that it's celebrated when it comes to one of the best beach resorts you have in this particular country. And so if you're able to purchase 60% shares in that, you bought a great asset indeed. Now, again, on that particular asset, talking about the Labadi Beach Hotel, now if you check the web, the graphic had a story on this where it gives us a sense of how they were faring. So this is a facility that wasn't doing too bad, right? In 2021, in terms of the dividends, we're talking about 10 million Ghana cedis. In 2022, they're talking about 25 million. And that was unprecedented in terms of the dividends they paid out over the years. So this is a facility that is doing well, right? But remember that SNIT has said that the reason we're doing this is for profitability, it's for efficiency. Was that to suggest that at least if you were taking Labadi Bitutel, there were inefficiency challenges that you require a Rock City to come in and manage? It's a question that has been asked. Someone could, for example, ask that question, that the 4 hotels in question, if you put all of them together and selling it off, you are actually, without disaggregating them and telling us which ones need what, you may be shortchanging the Ghanaian pensioner, because some of them, you need to keep them because they are performing well. And Labadi Bitutel is one of them that has been pointed to. And these numbers tell a story, right? And again, if you look at the key credentials that Rock City needed to bring in, according to SNIT itself, it had to have relevant credentials in hotel industry. The question you need to ask yourself tonight is, does Rock City have the relevant credentials? I'll show you the Rock City story, and then you can match it with these to then come to your own conclusions. But they also have to show proof of funding, the sources of that. Show us that you have the fund, but show us the proof of that source. And that was important. And so we're assuming now that Rock City emerged the best, according to SNIT, that it showed the source. Experience in owning hotels. Okay, so Big Rock City, what is this experience in owning hotels? And that's very important, not just one hotel. So you must have a chain, possibly. If you have one, you may not qualify here because it's a plural term that is being used there in the advert that was put as part of the competitive international tendering that was done. Also, experience in not just owning the hotels, managing the hotels, and development of real estate. So this was a package in terms of the criteria that was specified and was an international competitive bidding. So you expect, considering that you have a very popular hotel like Labadi Beach Hotel, when you travel, it is one of those hotels that people will refer to when you're coming to the Greater Accra region, when they come into Ghana. You would expect that there will be some international competition. Remember what I said at the beginning, world class, right? So these were some of the essential items that were being used to judge those who were putting in bids for that 60% stake that was available. So what did SNIT then decide to do? These are the timelines. They wanted to first search for a transaction advisor, which they did. They put out the advert in November 2018. And then in 2019, they had 6 out of 15 firms were shortlisted. And then in 2022, they moved on to the next step. After selecting the transaction advisor, moved to the next step where they were now looking for the strategic partner, right? That's where the Rock Cities and Co. came in. At the end of the process, they had 9 companies sent in proposals. They whittled all that down to 6. They looked at the 6 of them, and then they selected Rock City because they told that the Rock City emerged the best. Okay. Now, this has become controversial beyond just Samokude Tablaka going to Stride to file a petition. Yesterday, Organized Labour held a press conference. Why? Because if you look at the SNIT board itself, the Organized Labour have representation on there. In fact, they have 4 members on the board described specifically as members of Organized Labour. And then you also have a rep from the SNIT Pensioners Association. And if you're a pensioner, you will be considered part of Organized Labour broadly because, of course, you would have worked and retired, and Organized Labour will represent your interest anyway. So you can put all of them in that particular bracket. Overall, we're talking about 5 out of the 12 members of the SNIT Board of Trustees were people who are either reps of Organized Labour or, in the one case of the Pensions Association, a rep of the Pensions Association. So their interest is workers or pensioners, right? And why this is important is to ask the question, okay, so what happened when this first came to the board for consideration? We've seen Organized Labour at the press conference yesterday tell us that, well, their members on the board raised questions about it, and only to hear that the process is almost concluded and negotiations are now going to finalize that deal. So they were taking aback a bit. We would ask a few questions around this, by the way, but I thought I should bring that to you because very senior members of Organized Labour, Joshua Ansah, you know him, he's been on the show many, many times. He's a Deputy Secretary General of the TUC. So these are very senior members of Organized Labour who were on the particular SNIT board, and we are told yesterday that they asked questions, but did they do enough? Because 2022, when the selection process almost concluded with the selection, the shortlisting of the 6 and the selection of the 1, we're talking about 2024 now. It's taking almost 2 years for us to now see them hold a press conference. Why didn't this happen before? So these are like the questions we'll ask tonight. But then you look at the rest of the board, which is interesting because the rest of the board have reps appointed by the president, largely. Because you have Elizabeth Ohene, you know her, of course, the president who put that there, who's the board chair. You have Emmanuel Edu-Sarko, there's Employers Association, of course not, because they also independently employ, and so they have a rep there. Gloria Paida is the president's nominee too. You have the Pensions Association that I just mentioned earlier. You have Abena Osei-Asare, who is a deputy finance minister. Obviously, the president will put him head there. Osafo Mafo's son is also in there recently. Appointed to lead the organization under controversial circumstances, also the president's nominee, and the company secretary, and then you have the president's nominee, Peter Osei-Adua. So for these individuals, that's why the question will be raised about conflict of interest. For example, Abena Osei-Asare is a deputy minister, and you have Bryan Acheampong, who is a cabinet minister, too. Questions have been raised about, well, if a lot of them in here, several of them, are president's nominee, then they may influence the process somewhat. Well, that is the perception questions, but conflict of interest is not only one that must actually happen, must also be seen to be happening. The appearance of it sometimes is enough to put people off completely. Now, the concerns that have been raised are numerous, right? The 6 hotels, for example, is a key question. They're not in the same financial position. So why are you putting all of them together as if all of them may be struggling? So you need somebody to save them. And then you have the proposal to sell the 6 hotels, have now been whittled down to 4. What happened? You know, how come you did that? The board members said, we knew about 6. How come it's now 4? The payment terms are different from what was agreed in the transaction advisor's report, for example, is another one that has been raised. There's a whole host of them. And then you also look at the due diligence that has been alleged was not done, and that this may be state capture. That has also been raised, right? But then the Rock City question emerges. So what is Rock City? Rock City began construction somewhere around 2008. I have been to Rock City. It is a beautiful place. The background is this. They opened in 2019, right? It has been operational for approximately 5 years. Now, the key question, remember the criteria that was used at the beginning when I started. They must have that track record, experiencing managing hotels, owning hotels. Question is 5 years enough? If they were open in 2019, by 2022, when they were part of the 9 and they shortlisted to 6 and they won at that time, they would have operated just for, what, 3 years? You need to ask that question. Is 3 years enough to qualify them to run these 4 hotels and own 60% of them, including Labadi Beach Hotel, right? And another question that will raise is the competitive tendering. Who else put in the tender? Which other hotel put in the tender? Considering that it was international competitive tendering, which hotels across the world did so? And really did the Rock City emerge the best? Now, so that's another key question that has come. They had over 600 rooms available right now. They have ambitions to become the largest hotel in Africa. They want to get to as much as 2,200 rooms. So they have great ambitions at Rock City. And we've heard the owner today say what is happening right now is tarnishing the reputation of Rock City, right? We've seen Bryan Acheampong make the point today that really there's no question there about conflict of interest. And even the questions about the constitutional provision that requires him to get a certificate, to own and offer to profit, that's not arise, he believes, because he is a shareholder and a director, and so that will not necessarily apply to him. He's raised those questions. And then Rock City, in terms of hotels, these are all that they own. So they're not just Rock City, what we know to be in the eastern region. They also have operations in Kwehu. That's what you know. We have the Takrade. They're also in Cape Coast, Kumasi, and we know they're also in Ada. So they come to the table, they believe, with a track record, of course, but we need to know who else was considered, and hopefully we can get the organized labor to tell us. This conversation has happened, the backdrop of a story that we broke on this particular show, PM Express, about the actual report that told us that by 2036, if SNIT doesn't manage its affairs properly, they will struggle to pay benefits on time and in full. And if you look at the trajectory, they're paying benefits all right, which is a fact. As you see, the benefits versus contributions. They're paying benefits of 3.6 billion as of 2021, and the contributions coming in at 4 billion. So slightly above that. SNIT says they will remain in business for the long haul. And if you also look at their net investment income, it's also rising, even if marginally. According to the 2020-2021, 469 million there, climbing to 473, right? But not all is rosy, because if you look at this here, the surplus versus the deficit, if you look at the 2021, they are in the red, right? So not everything is well at SNIT, and that is why this is very important, because it has to do with your pensions. My guests will join me, particularly from organized labor. I understand that they're actually asking to speak to the president. Samakuju Tablakwa is my guest, will join me. We'll also speak to Mashoud, who broke that story on the show 3 weeks ago. And then, of course, Dr. Otu, who will join us also from organized labor. I'm grateful. And PM Express is always brought to you by Syntax Tanks. It is strong, it is tough. Alomo Bitters experience greatness in every moment. It's also brought to you by Ghana AIDS Commission and by Pepsodent. Every smile matters. The Syntax Tanks is a tank for you. They have 7 years warranty. They're across the country and they come in different shapes and sizes, and it is bespoke. And you don't really want to buy anything else if you want to store water. Why don't you call them 0244 335 168 or shop online at syntaxgh.com. You're strong, you're tough. And Pepsodent, if you're sleeping tonight and you want to brush your teeth, you want to do it with Pepsodent. Why? Because they have pro-fluoride and microcalcium ingredients, sealing tiny and invisible holes in your teeth. And of course, they come in different sizes that allows you to afford something, definitely. Pepsodent, every smile matters. My guess, as I indicated at the top of the hour when I gave you a brief on what has been happening, in case you've missed, Samakuju Tablakwa is a member of parliament for Norton constituency. We have Dr. Kwabena Nyako Otu, is the director of research and policy at TUC. Abdullah Mashoud is executive director of the Africa Center for Retirement Research. Mr. Kuju Tablakwa, so this has traveled a fair bit since you put out your expose and went to charge with it. Today, you had an encounter with Bryan Acheampong on the Super Morning Show. I'm curious to know, based on that encounter, because you asked him questions, he attempted to give you an answer, have you changed your view of the transaction at all?
Good evening, Evans. Good evening to the panel. Good evening to all viewers. I am more convinced and actually very outraged after the encounter with the Honorable Bryan Acheampong this morning. Look, let's be clear. Everything I put out in this petition has been confirmed by the Honorable Bryan Acheampong. He has confirmed that he is a director. He is the sole beneficial owner of Rock City Hotel. The crux of my submission and my petition to Shraj is that a minister of state, a public official, should not go anywhere near a state asset being sold. It's conflict of interest, it's abuse of power, it is unethical, it is reprehensible. And I have always maintained this position. You remember 16 years ago, I took the Honorable Jacob Echebelamte to court. It traveled all the way to the Supreme Court when I discovered that he was in the process of purchasing his official bungalow. My position has not changed. The attempt by the Honorable Bryan Acheampong to say that he is not involved in day-to-day management. The issue is about the profits, the proceeds from that company. It's not going to go to the workers of Ghana. It's not going to come to members of parliament. It's going to him. He's the sole beneficial owner. So he should stop the attempts to obfuscate. It is also clear that he is in flagrant violation of Article 78(3) and 98(2) of the 1992 Constitution. He did not and has not applied to the Speaker. And if you read those provisions carefully, it is to avoid conflict of interest so that members of parliament, ministers of state, don't abuse their office, take advantage of their office, the influence they wield, to engage in business for private gain. That is why you must disclose your interests, disclose the kind of business you own and the kind of transactions that you'll be engaged in.
I mean, today he admitted that he has not. He admitted he's not applied to the Speaker.
He has not.
But his argument is that he is a shareholder, and that provision does not apply to him because he doesn't hold an office of profit.
He is
as
a director.
shareholder.
He's not only a shareholder. He's a director, and he's the sole beneficial owner. When Rock City makes profits, it's coming to him. So he can't get away from this. Look. He has been so reckless, he's violated the Constitution, and he's engaged in unethical conduct. Look, let us have standards in this country. It is, look, I haven't heard anywhere in this world where a minister of state, a member of parliament, will be purchasing state assets. Look, let's come to even
But if there's value for money, you can ascertain that. Well, what stops him from doing it? What stops him? Nothing stops him. It's an ethical conversation, is it not?
It is unethical. There's conflict of interest. Look, you are sitting in cabinet. You are privy to insider information. Nobody can convince me that SNIT, taking such a major decision, will not go to cabinet for approval. Nobody can convince me. Major decision. You are divesting 60% of your shares in 6 hotels. It's such a major decision. The state is going to lose its control in these hotels. It's going to go to another entity apart from the state. Definitely, the government will have an interest in this matter. There will be discussions at cabinet. You have your colleague ministers and government appointees on the SNIT board. Look, it's untidy. This is conflict of interest. This doesn't happen anywhere else. And look, even the decision to divest SNIT official of these hotels, some of which are so profitable. Labadi Beach Hotel paid dividends of 25 million last year, the year before 10 million. I have the financial review of Ridge Royal, very healthy, very profitable. I mean, why would anybody, and if you look at the prime locations of these hotels, the land alone, and these are fixed assets that are appreciating every year. And you are talking about pension management, where in the next medium to long term, people will be retiring. You always must have strategic investments that will continue to give you the needed yields so that you can pay pensions. Who is taking these decisions? That profitable businesses. And you see from the SNIT statement that it started at 6. Eventually, Rock City is not showing interest in 2. What are those 2? Buzia and Trust Lodge, which in the portfolio are not doing very well. So, ab initio, you see where the interest is. He's targeting the very profitable ones. Labadi Beach. He's looking at Elmina, strategic location. Prime land, beachfront, La Palm, Ridge Royal.
But La Palm isn't doing great. La Palm is a struggling entity.
But if you look at, I've seen the valuation reports. If you look at the asset, the land alone, and La Palm isn't doing well, because of a management issue.
Yeah, but so isn't that why they say that you need a company with a backbone and track record to run this, manage it properly, bring it to profitability?
So if you look at the history of these hotels, there have been years, considerable periods, that these hotels have done very well under different kinds of management. It tells you that when you have the right management, you have competent people, these businesses will thrive and they will do well. Particularly if you see what is happening at Labadi, if you see what is happening at Ridge Royale. So La Palme and Elmina can do well. It's an issue of who SNIT is appointing to go manage those entities. But don't forget that even as these hotels are not doing well, the land is appreciated astronomically. And I do not know why anybody at this time, I mean, when you have SNIT has other investments, for example, 80% in STC, which is not doing well at all. They are not talking about that. They are looking at hiving off businesses that are doing well. Don't forget that apart from these 6 hotels, 2 years ago, in 2022, they sold all their shares, 25% of their shares, to this same Rock City under very opaque circumstances.
And
if
this,
you look at
this is a subject the one in Kumasi, which is
yes, the one in Kumasi,
a subject you brought up today. And
exactly, they failed to pay. They failed to pay the real value.
But Bryan Acheampong today.
The same thing will happen with these 6 hotels.
Bryan Acheampong today, when you raised that matter, explained in quite great detail what happened. So it's a private entity that had acquired it and had not paid anything to SNIT. And it was valued, and they paid quite a significant amount to that private entity. And SNIT came back. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, they paid, what, $5 million?
He said $3 million.
$3 million it was, yes, which came down to some 7 million CDs at the time that he paid it, right? And then it SNIT came back because the CD had changed, and he paid even more. I mean, and your contention is that what, it was undervalued?
So you need to differentiate between the 75% that belonged to the private investor, which Bryan Acheampong bought out, and the 25% that belonged to SNIT. If you look at how the negotiations went with the 25%, it had been valued at 8.6 million, those 25% shares. And yet the Honorable Bryan Acheampong, the SNIT management somehow allowed him to pay way below the valuation amount of 8.6 million. And that 7.4 million he was allowed to pay, which made us lose, Ghana and Ghanaian workers lost 1.2 million. He was even asked to pay on installment basis. And he also refused to peg the transaction to the dollar. Because if you read the minutes, SNIT had insisted.
But he challenged that today. He said that it was pegged to the dollar.
Pegged to the dollar. But he refused. If you look at the minutes.
No, but
I read the minutes to him.
Well, I'm making the point about what he said. He said they pegged it to the dollar, and he paid it. And in fact, he came back later, and the dollar, of course, the CD relation has changed, and he paid even more.
I challenged him on that because all the documentation I have on that transaction, they refused. Indeed, his reps in the meeting flatly refused. It was Mr. Chum of SNIT who kept, drawing attention that is a big anomaly. And when you read the minutes, it's as though the hotel and SNIT belongs to Rock City. They were calling the shots. They had everything they wanted. And you ask yourself, who was speaking for Ghana? Who was speaking for SNIT?
Mr. Please
first of all, Rock City should not have been allowed to pay below the valuation amount. Number 2, they should not have been allowed to pay in installments. That was not the agreement. Number 3, it should have been pegged according to the dollar.
Okay, stay with me.
The depreciation currency.
I want to bring in
that same attitude. And if you read the TUC statement carefully,
just a second.
If you read the TUC statement on the 6 hotels, they have started doing the same thing with the current transaction.
Let's stay with me. I want to bring in Mr. Otu Dr. Otu into the conversation. Of course, he's with the organized labor, specifically he is with TUC. Dr. Atu, thanks for staying with me. I mean, wanted to flesh this out a bit more. Yesterday, you held a press conference on the matter. But keeping them honest, you have reps on the board. And if you read the SNIT statement, they talk about the whittling down of the companies that submitted proposals to 6. This happened in 2022. And the selection of Rock City happened shortly thereafter. Between 2022 and 2024, you have at least 4 years has elapsed now. Why is TUC, organized labor, holding a press conference 2 years later when this decision was done a while back?
Thank you, Evans, for having me. I mean, it's a good question. But let me say that better late than never. Whatever be the case, we have a battle on our hands to fight. But remember that if we are talking about investment decisions, not all of which we at some point would like to make public. So we have our processes of advocacy and lobbying that we do behind the scenes to correct some of the things that are not right in our view. So if you remember in the May Day address,
this year,
on May 1st, the Secretary General raised a number of concerns about pension and specifically asked the President for an invitation to organize labor to discuss a number of important issues concerning SNIT and its management. And some of these issues, we had them in mind. Of course, that invitation has still not come from the President, and we expect that the President will actually hit to the core of organized labor for a meeting to discuss some of these issues. And just about 3 weeks ago, you mentioned the SNIT actuarial report and all the things. In fact, in the last 10 years, beginning from, say, 2014, there has been 3 different actuarial reports.
Yeah, I mean, before we even go into the actuarial report, which is an important matter, I still need to get clarity on this because you have 4 reps on the SNIT board, 4 reps. The decision to select Rock City was made tail end of 2022. You went public only yesterday. You say, well, the background, you were negotiating, okay, and you didn't want to bring it up. So why did you then decide to hold a press conference now to tell us about it and to say you're resisting it? Okay, which means you could have done it 2 years ago.
It's true, but I've also pointed out the fact that these are investment decisions. And sometimes you actually do not want to jeopardize SNIT and its decisions.
So what changed? So what changed yesterday?
So what changed actually is that we now realize that the whole process has been fast-tracked to some extent by SNIT and the people behind the scenes doing the deal.
But is that actually factual?
We also then realize that...
Is that actually factual, though? Is that actually factual? Because if you go by the SNIT, and you haven't disputed the SNIT timeline, that Bryan Acheampong conversation, and I've heard Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa actually make the point that the delay has actually been because one of the private entities had gotten your lawyers to write to SNIT, so that delayed the process. At least it's been more than a year that Bryan Acheampong's Rock City was selected. So where's the fast tracking? Your main concern is Bryan Acheampong.
So I've just made a point that we hold a number of things, information, and sometimes it's not everything that we want to put out. You understand? There are things we know that we are working in the interest of Ghanaian workers. We have called for a meeting with the President on some of these issues. What's the point in putting out those issues even before we meet with the President? But of course, once the issue is in the public domain by the Honorable Samuel Okudzeto, an important issue of that nature, we cannot also keep quiet on it. It's already out there in the public domain.
So if Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa had not put it, in the public domain, we would not have had TUC hold a press conference on this.
Of course, you would have still pressed ahead with our meeting with the President. And from whatever comes out of that meeting, we surely would have informed the people of Ghana. But
I'm not so sure now. And I'm asking these questions. I know. I'm asking these questions, as you know, because I am also a parent. I mean, I contribute. You represent me, all of us, right? So my interest is there too. And the reason why it's important to hold your feet to the fire a bit, because that's why you have 4 people on the board, right? It took a member of parliament to take that bold step to take this matter, and nothing is proving. So it's still investigated. Just having that at the back of your mind. But at least you agree with him. But it took him before you hold the press conference. And I must put to you, that is failing in your duty to protect the workers in a very timely manner to prevent something like that from happening.
Not necessarily. You see, there are a lot of things the TUC does behind the scenes, and not everything that we put into the public domain. We get results from some of the things we do behind the scenes. We commend the Honorable for bringing the issue to the limelight, but it does not necessarily mean that the TUC was not doing anything about it. I have told you that when we have information to what was happening, not just this one. There are many other things happening to SNIT or happening with SNIT workers' money. But we thought that we needed a meeting at the highest level to be able to address some of the issues.
But that meeting took 2 years, and you were happy waiting.
I'm telling you that just on May 1st, we asked for that meeting.
Why didn't you ask that meeting last year when you saw Bryan Acheampong's company as the winner of the bid?
Okay, so you know that we have had several meetings with the presidents. You don't know all the issues that we have raised.
I'm asking now, did you raise that in that meeting you had last year with the president?
A lot of issues.
No, did you raise specifically? Did you raise the Bryan Acheampong Rock City sale of 60% stake with the president last year?
Not necessarily. We didn't raise that issue.
But that is an indictment on organized labor, TUC. It is an indictment, is it not?
We have a flow of information, you understand? So for all you know, when we met with the president last year, we didn't have the details of this Rock City thing.
But you did, because you have 4 members on the board who took the decision. We don't even know if they voted on this matter. But 4 members, including the reps of the Pensions Association on there, who knew that the decision had been taken. So you had all the information. If Samuel Acheampong could get this information, definitely those 4 members should have it too.
So you see, you are not allowing me to flow to put my thoughts together. You understand? There are many things we know about SNIT and state institutions. You understand? We have our own level with which we address some of these issues. As far back as 2017, we had put a number of issues regarding SNIT to the president. So, for example, we thought that the labor needed more membership on the SNIT board, because those 4 members can always be outnumbered by a vote. Because as you showed the faces, the names of the board members, we have 4, but we are still in the minority. We had, for example, asked that instead of getting the president to appoint the Director General of SNIT, we want the board to appoint the Director General of SNIT. But you know, these things take a lot of time to materialize, because there are interest groups. We are not the only ones. Of course, SNIT money is for workers, and we are a major stakeholder. But we should not delude ourselves in thinking that others also do not have an interest. The point I'm making with you is that, and even if you even know the way our boards are structured, you still have today board members being asked to swear an oath of secrecy to whoever. All of these things are issues that you need to address, not just in respect of SNIT, but also in respect of all other state entities.
Okay. So it's in the public domain now. Samuel Acheampong went public and you followed. And I know, from what I understand, you now want this meeting with the president is something that you are pressing hard. You actually sent a petition to the Jubilee House. Have you received any response?
Not so far. We haven't received any response so far. But we will continue to press so that we get the kind of response we need. But remember that we put it in that press release that if you don't hear or if you don't get the Minister for Pensions calling for the suspension of this, in fact, the complete cancellation of this process, we will advise ourselves. And I'm sure the Minister for Pensions and Government understands when Labour says that we will advise ourselves.
Did you give him an ultimatum?
I mean, I think that's enough ultimatum when Labour says that we will advise ourselves.
Well, by which date are you expecting to hear from him?
We haven't set a date yet. That's as far as I am concerned.
But why not? Why not?
Of course, you can be sure that as long as the TUC has taken up this matter, you can be sure that we will not rest on it. We will do everything to make sure that this process is stopped. That one, the workers of Ghana can take it from me.
Okay. Stay with me. I want to bring in Mashoud now, who also joins us now. He obviously has been on the show talking about pensions, and he is the head of the association that deals with these matters, and he's been studying this for a while. He's a pensions expert himself. Abiola, I want you to give me a comment on the way organized. You work with the TUC, you work with organized labor, you work with them in dealing with these pensions issues. Give me a quick comment on the way organized labor have handled this matter.
Right, thank you, and good evening to your listeners. I just want to make an appeal. I appreciate the work organized labor, particularly TUC, is doing in protecting the Ghanaian pensioner and the Ghanaian contributor. But what needs to be put on the record is that the dynamics of Social Security administration and governance around the world is fast changing, and it is about time we look at it that way. I think there are a lot of things that are happening in the pension space in Ghana that falls squarely under the purview of TUC and organized labor, because they have the primary responsibility to protect the interests of the Ghanaian contributor. I'm not really seeing that much. And I'll give you an example. I remember in May 2022, the NPRA constituted a 17-member committee to review the investment policy guidelines of the trust. Of course, this came under the leadership of Ogbami Tete, I think the chairman of the Security Exchange Commission. There are questions we have to ask about that particular committee. Has the committee submitted its report to the regulator, because it was NPRA that constituted a 17-member committee? Has the report been discussed by stakeholders? I doubt seriously if the stakeholders, I'm talking about representative of organized labor on the SNIT board and the NPRA board. I doubt seriously whether they have discussed this particular report. Has it been gazetted? That is, if they have discussed it, has it been gazetted? And do we now have a functioning investment policy guidelines? I'm talking about a functioning investment policy guideline because up to that point, SNIT was only using a draft investment policy guideline. Look, what are we talking about here? So on that note, let me say organized labor have a very big role to play in protecting the interests of the Ghanaian pensioners.
On this matter, yes, it's come late, but did they fail, do you think? Have they adequately discharged your responsibility to us, the workers?
Yeah, the timing I can say is not right, but it better be late than never. I appreciate the position that they have given government the ultimatum to ensure that this. But
it's not an exact ultimatum, is it? I mean, there's no timeline or night time frame within which the ministry should work.
Of course, I expect that organized labor are going to stick to their feet and really ensure that this thing is aborted. Here we are talking about an individual investor with very little evidence in terms of track record, who has been packaged to swallow 4 major assets of the public pension system. We are asking whether the transaction is in the best interest of contributors and pensioners. We are also asking whether it meets the best practices and standards, and whether the transaction would translate into good investment returns.
What's your answer? What's your answer to all these questions you've asked?
It's no.
Okay.
If we are really going to fit this one into the standard best practices, especially when you're talking about International Social Security Association standards of investment policy guidelines, this one is not going to, make the mark. And I'm talking about investment risk. Do we know, have we seen the financial statement, the last auditor's report, who are the board of directors of this hotel that we are talking about, and what are their track records? All these things need to be discussed. And I feel that in all this discussion, you realize that the regulator who is supposed to be, calling the shots is completely missing in this discussion.
That is the MPRA.
That is the MPRA. It's completely missing. And Evans, I'll plead that when we are having discussions like this, try as much as you can to get them on board, because
I can assure you that we've tried.
Great.
You remember you were here 3 weeks ago when we had this conversation. The MPRA, they don't want to touch this. It's too hot to handle for them, although they are the regulators on this and they should be calling SNIT to order.
Look, it's great. So going forward, I think we need a lot of documents to be able to really size up the prudence of the, the action of the trust as far as the sale of 4 hotels is concerned. And I'm saying that we need to look at the Rock City's financial statement. What is the last auditor's report saying? Who are the board of directors? What are their track records when it comes to administering hospitality? What do you call hospitality? Whatever.
Yeah.
Again, Evans,
yeah.
why do we want to fix what is not broken? If you look at the 4 hotels, I have had figures with regards to Labadi Hotel and Ridge Royal. They turn up very good returns in the year 2023. And I just wonder, even granting that they are not doing well, all the 4 hotels haven't done well in the past 5 years. What is happening is that in Social Security Administration, when you run into such a situation, you just don't pick it and sell it to somebody who...
What do you do?
What do they call it?
What do you do instead?
It's operational and administrative issues. What you have to do is to look at issues of management, issues of operations, administration. You have to pick it. There are changes they need to make in there in order to make those institutions profitable. Remember, as I said, we are looking at a smaller entity owned by an individual who is coming to swallow staff that are bigger, assets that are bigger than what do they call it, the main primary body.
Okay.
This absolutely it's not right. And I'm saying you don't try to fix what is not broken.
Okay, which is the point you explained. That's Abdullah Mashoud, is it? Executive Director of the Africa Center for Retirement Research. I want to go back quickly because of time to someone to Ablakwa. Mr. Ablakwa, there's another aspect you raised, fundamentally about the conflict of interest situation, but also the constitutional provision that requires MPs and ministers, if they want to hold an office of profit, to, of course, declare, but go to the speaker and get a certificate, etc. Now, that is all in your petition to Shraj, but isn't that one that should go to the Speaker of Parliament, at least that the minister then in question is hauled before the Privileges Committee for some sort of a hearing? I haven't heard you or seen you pursue that.
Well, I have stated for the record that I will be bringing this formally to the attention of the Right Honourable Speaker. The House is on recess. When I filed this petition on Friday, we had just been moved in for a day sitting, which was very packed. I tried to get audience with the Right Honourable Speaker, but it was a really, really packed day. But I intend to bring this to the Speaker's attention so that Parliament will deal with it. I mean, I have obtained the full list of 47 ministers and MPs diligently, and I know for a fact, and indeed the Honourable Bryan Acheampong confirmed this morning that he has not complied with these provisions of the Constitution. So I certainly will bring this to the attention of the Speaker as soon as the House resumes.
Okay, and Dr. Otu, to the millions of workers watching us tonight who may be alarmed at what is happening, who will be relying on yourself and the 4 reps they have on the SNIT board, what do you tell them? And when they go back and check that and realize that 2 years had passed and people on the board knew and nothing has happened, what's your assurance to them tonight on this subject, even as it's investigated, even as the questions of impropriety and the alleged conflict of interest is investigated by Shraj? You believe something is wrong there, and so it should be cancelled. That is your position. So you already taken the stance that this transaction should not proceed. However, so far, SNIT is defending its decision. The government has not spoken yet. So we need to assume that as far as SNIT government is concerned, this is going and proceeding. What's your assurance to the workers? Please unmute for me.
The workers is that
it's 10 o'clock.
they should not panic. even though the details of what Honorable Acheampong is telling us is really scary. But we in the TUC will do everything to protect their contributions. We will not sit down idle for this thing to just pass. And when we come to this discussion, our point is that beside all the technicalities, we think that it undermines governance. There's something wrong with governance when the politicians at the helm of affairs are SNIT. Remember, they are appointed by the president. Can only find another politician within the government setup who has presented a so-called technically superior proposal. We think that there's something wrong with it. Now, the basis of that, we think clearly that there's no way we will allow one part of the government to sell SNIT asset to another part of the government or individuals in there. And we can assure workers that we will do everything in our power to make sure that this deal is stopped.
Okay.
But beyond that, probably, if you go back into the history of SNIT, we have had too many attempts, and sometimes successful attempts, by SNIT to dispose of its asset to groups and individuals under very controversial circumstances. We will also make sure that we ensure that this thing does not happen in future. And that probably also means, and I mentioned this 3 weeks ago when I was on your show, that we need to strengthen our representation on these state institutions, particularly SNIT, to make sure that we are able to arrest some of these things in time and we don't get to the point where we are currently.
When you say strengthen, do you want more members or you want to strengthen the individuals you take there?
Both. We can do both. We want more members so that even if there's a vote, the people whose money is in there are not outnumbered by government appointees. Okay, so but we also want strong people, technically strong people who understand all these investment decisions and at the very least can hold the process even at the board level before it gets to this kind
So now you have 4.
The workers of Ghana should be rest assured that the TUC and organized labor will make sure that this deal does not happen.
So now you have 4 on the board. How many more do you need?
We need a majority on the board.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. That there is Dr. Otu. Someone could do the Blackwa earlier. I am Mashoud. Enjoy the rest of the evening.